If you talk to any Potter fan who's read the books, there is almost unanimous agreement that Half-Blood Prince is the worst movie. Not because it's just a bad movie, but because compared to the books, it just misses the mark. There were a number of scenes that the books had that the movies just kind of flubbed on. Like Dumbledore not immobilizing Harry, or not having the funeral of Albus Dumbledore, or even missing the majority of the memories that Tom Riddle had, which fleshed out his character so much in that book and gives you the reasons for the way that he is. But in spite of its shortcomings, I still think this movie delivers in a way that the other movies just don't. It's not a great adaptation, I agree, but as far as the beats of this movie and the amount of moving scenes it has and the near perfect pacing of it, I think it's easily the best movie. I am going to say what I think is the best scene in the entire film franchise for my last point, but I want to start off at the end of the movie, with one of the strongest scenes in the entire film, the cave. Now, the cave is my all-time favorite chapter in the books. I remember the first time I read it and how tense I felt, and to be honest, the movie scene captures a lot of that tension. Think of how many of you jumped during that scene where the hand comes out of the water. I think you jump because they've been building the scene so well that even though you know something bad is going to happen when Harry dips his hand into the water, you cannot help but be scared. I also think the acting on Michael Gambon's part is probably his best of the whole series. I am a very harsh critic of Gambon's performance, but I think he truly does excellently here with his kindness and his expertise in magic. Because I remember the feeling of reading this in the book and seeing how Dumbledore was acting and seeing the magic that he was performing and just being amazed. And I actually think Gambon captures that somewhat well here. You have this whole scene shot in a near monochromatic palette as well that adds this layer of intensity, making it a memorable and impactful cinematic experience, and it makes it so beautiful when Dumbledore finally wields the fire and the scene erupts in color and gorgeous music, some of the most beautiful music in the whole series. I could dissect this scene for hours, but I actually think it's a great adaptation. Another thing that the movie just nails from the books is the delicate balance between the seriousness of things happening in the memories and Draco's predicament and the attacks happening at Hogwarts, and just the teenage desire for romance and just wanting to be a normal teenager. The books are so excellent in showing that this was dead serious and people will die. But at the same point, Joe writes in a way that you see these kids just want to be teenagers. They just want to make out in the hallways and play Quidditch and stay hidden up here too if you'd like, which don't get me started on that scene. Bonnie Wright, I love you, but that was just a rough Ginny line, so that wasn't your fault. The movies do incredibly well, especially showing the jovialness of the Slug Club and how all these teens are concerned about dates. And then here you have Draco, just being in immense depression and isolation. There's a scene in the books that Draco actually befriends Moaning Myrtle, which shows the depths of his loneliness. And even though the movies don't have that, you still see how isolated and scared this kid is. And that's in the middle of all these scenes of Ron giggling and Lav just being terrifying and Harry just wanting to be alone with Ginny. The juxtaposition provides a nuanced perspective on the character's struggles during this rough time, and it's just, again, an excellent adaptation. People make fun of this all the time. They even have trailer remakes of making this movie a rom-com, but I think that's the essence of the book. I think this book too is a rom-com split with a horror, split with a thriller. It just is so good, and the movie, maybe it emphasizes a little bit too much the rom-com-ness of it, but I think it really nails a lot of the sad, depressing, and serious beats as well. Now let's talk casting. Jim Broadbent is perfect. Absolutely perfect. He may be a tad different from book Slughorn, but he portrays the character perfectly within the context of the films. He's just got this aloofness and charmingness that is so lovely. He comes across less as a person seeking to be a leech of famous people and more of just this charming guy who is proud of the students he's taught. He is the centerpiece and probably my favorite adaptation in the scene, and he is just a world-class actor. I also think Alan Rickman gives a fantastic performance in this movie, and I think it's Tom Felton's best movie as well, of how he actually gives you the ability to feel sorry and to feel pity for Draco, this character who many people hate more than Dudley, even Voldemort himself. That is an astounding feat. Now, before I talk about that scene that is my favorite scene in the entire film franchise, I want to hit on a few other scenes that just really quickly show how great this movie is. I think the Katie Bell attack is undeniably one of the scariest moments in the entire series. It showcases the film's ability to convey tension and fear really effectively. And I don't think anybody can really forget Weasley Wizard Wheezes when you watch it on the screen. The film brings this magical joke shop to life in a way that is absolutely wonderful. Also, the Liquid Luck scene, shot for shot, nails the essence of the book, making it one of the best executed scenes in the entire series. And Ron's Quidditch tryouts and just the look of Quidditch in general, that's an extraordinary thing. And young Tom Riddle is creepy and the memories just look so cool. But the pièce de résistance of this movie comes in the middle of an already brilliant scene. This already brilliant scene is the Liquid Luck scene, which is one of the best in the whole series. Radcliffe, I think, does his best acting in this scene. But this is a scene, it's one of those rare ones where in the whole series they did something that I actually think is better than the books. Horace Slughorn adds a small little story about Francis the Fish. In the books, Harry goes on to tell Slughorn that Voldemort walked over his dead mother's body. And then he says this, "I forgot," lied Harry, Felix Felicis leading him on. "You liked her, didn't you?" "Liked her," said Slughorn, his eyes brimming with tears once more. "I don't imagine anyone who met her wouldn't have liked her. Very brave, very funny. It was the most horrible thing." But in the movies, it goes a step further. And rather than Slughorn just telling Harry how much he loved and appreciated Lily, he shows how incredible Lily was through this story. And just shows how much he valued her as a person. Slughorn goes on to say this, "Was a student who gave me Francis. One spring afternoon, I discovered a bowl on my desk. Just a few inches of clear water in it. Floating on the surface was a flower petal. As I watched, it sank. Just before it reached the bottom, it was transformed into a wee fish. It was beautiful magic, wondrous to behold. The flower petal had come from a lily, your mother. The day I came downstairs, the day the bowl was empty, was the day your mother. I know why you're here, but I can't help you. It'll ruin me." This is the age-old moniker in storytelling of show, don't tell. And this story adds depth not only to Slughorn, but to Lily as well, who may just be the only truly pure person in the entire series. It's a somber moment which shows that Slughorn, he doesn't want to give up his memory, yes, because he's embarrassed, but the source of his embarrassment comes from Voldemort murdering some of the people that he loved most as a teacher. And I think it's the single best adaptation that these movies have ever made from book to movie. So, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince might not be the most faithful adaptation, but it shines in its own right. Sometimes the magic lies in unexpected gems, the moments where the filmmakers took these creative liberties that were just brilliant, and sometimes it shines in the acts of each movie or the pacing of the performances, but I think as a movie independent from the books, this movie, the one that most people think is the worst movie in the entire franchise, is actually the best. What are your thoughts on this divisive film? And let me know also what your rank of all the movies would be.